Thank you for joining the Sharpest College Football Podcast. This is our playoff round 2 preview. I am BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin, and once again having the pleasure of being joined by Isaiah Walker. Gentlemen, a good round 1, more or less formful, but we move on to round 2.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think the two of the games, and we'll talk about them in a second. Two of the games were probably two of the best first round games so far of the 2 years, and then two of them were probably two of the worst first round games so far. So a little bit of a dichotomy there.
Pretty high bar.
Yeah,
for the bad games.
It's because last year's were just because
Yeah.
that was like Indiana Notre Dame was competitive near the end, but Indiana had to come back. Texas Clemson was just like whatever. Ohio State just destroyed Tennessee, and then Penn State played SMU. That's right, when SMU turned the ball over 3 times in an interception or something. So yeah, not a very high bar for the first two games to clear, but they cleared it though. And yeah, we'll get into that in a second.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting first round. Like I said, two really good games. They both came down to the wire. They both, or somewhat on the second one, but both told us a lot about the two teams, how they were playing the game, and then the two other games, which I think the benefit to this year was that we 100% everybody, like basically everybody knew there was 0% chance that, that James Madison was winning, and there was like 0.5% chance that Tulane was winning. Whereas like, I think enough people convinced themselves last year on Boise State, those teams, right? They had Ashley Genty, right? There's like a way that this could happen, and then you were just disappointed right away. So I guess from that aspect, we had that, but I felt pretty good about one bad beat is what it is, but I thought the reads were good other than Oklahoma, so I'll take that.
Yeah. All right. If you are new, this is our glossary. Go ahead and do a screen grab of it and save it where you save all of your college football stuff. And if you are not new and returning, we thank you so much for your loyalty. And as by now you are by definition brilliant. One podcast play for round 1. I'll just say really quick here. My model had Oregon JMU going under. A lot of models did because that number went from like 51 to 47, I believe. So the book's kind of cleaned up on that. So, Robert, the quest to get back to 50%, not quite successful enough, but we've got some more games ahead of us here.
Yeah, we got more games. But yeah, I mean, we're basically going to end the season on even. But again, there's a lot of other games we talked about that we really liked throughout the year. So saying that these were the only plays that we had is a bit misleading. But yeah.
Well, I'm a CPA. It's my job is to mislead people. Okay, let's talk about the round 1 games. I'll just hit each of these in order and just give you my impressions, and you guys can respond. My takeaway about Alabama, Oklahoma, if you have a defense like Oklahoma's and you're up by 17, you give up that kind of lead. Bigger picture, I have concerns about the program. Obviously you can't do that. You can't do that with that kind of defense, and I'm not going to say Oklahoma's out of levers to push, but they pushed the big one, and it didn't really get them to where they went, and their defense cracked. Now, there was weird stuff in there in terms of I guess we would call it a blocked punt. I don't know. I don't know what you call it with the punter. I don't know. You guys can explain that. But then a pick 6, so obviously there was a lot of help on that. But if I'm an Oklahoma fan, I'm delighted about how this season went because as an objective outsider, I thought they were going to win 7 or 8 games. So making the playoff was way above expectations, but that is not the way. The way that season ended is really concerning to me. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, just a complete absence of offense down the stretch. And you looked pretty good early in the game, right? Like you put up 17 points in the first half. And I think they were helped by that. They're helped by a couple of short fields, if I remember correctly, early. Yeah. But again, still though, 17 points, that's not nothing. That's 2 touchdowns and a field goal. And then basically after you scored 17 at the half, the next points you scored were basically garbage time points in the fourth quarter. When you're like trying to desperately get back, then you missed 2 more field goals, which would have made it marginally closer. But no, huge mistakes here on the Oklahoma side. There was that messed up punt. There was the pick 6. And this is the issue, right? And we talked about this a little bit before when I was like, oh, clearly Mateer is still injured. Maybe 3 weeks would be better. And for a quarter and maybe a quarter and a half, it looked really good. But then halfway through the second quarter, you had that pick 6. and then again, no points in the third, and then you get like a garbage time touchdown pass in the fourth, but that's it. That's all the offense they were able to generate. And their defense just was not on. Now, obviously, they were not helped by the pick six and the bad whatever that punt was, but that's the thing. And it's concerning, right? You put up 24 against Alabama. You actually put up 24 the last time you played Alabama, too. I think they won 24-20 in that game, if I'm not mistaken. So, again, you keep putting up 24 points. That's not enough to win in college football. It's only 50-50 you win a game if you put up 24. You need to heavily rely on the defense. You need to heavily rely on the defense against... They needed to heavily rely on the defense against LSU, against Missouri. And they're gonna have to play better teams next year, right? And like they have to play Michigan. Michigan might be better next year than they were this year potentially, right? Yeah, if I'm Oklahoma, I'm a little concerned with how this went, right, and how you choked away a 17-point lead that easily. Like it was just literally you're up 17-0, and then all of a sudden it was just tied going into half. And then I think everybody knew. I didn't touch it, but I'm like, this is going to go sideways for them. You've given Alabama all the momentum now. This is going, and sure enough, they just piled it on.
Is John Mateer maybe secretly my age, where he's just, I can play for an hour, then my hand just gets sore and it wears out? Is that a possibility?
But the thing is, this is the thing, right? And it's like, at a certain point, you have to say, okay, clearly this isn't working. Could you, like, the backup was, like, okay-ish against Kent State. Could you, like, why are you not practicing the backup in these games? Why is this offense still not good? Why, like, the offense wasn't great last year. It's still not great this year, right? This is not okay. If at any point, like, even if you got up 17-0 and then Alabama ties, they had the ball to kick off the third. If you go down and you score a touchdown, this game is completely different. If you say, yep, all right, we were doing good, and we lost momentum there, but we're going to go down, we're going to score a touchdown, you can pivot the momentum right back to yourselves, right? But they didn't do that. They were just like, no, it's okay, and this is the end result of that. So this is the thing, where that's the outcome of the game, and had they been able to score more on offense, I think this game would have gone very differently.
Yeah. Isaiah, when it ends badly with one coach and they hire his replacement, the thing is, the program always goes for the opposite kind of guy. And I think, did we get the exact opposite of Lincoln Riley here? I've got a defensive genius who cannot line up an offense to save his life.
Yeah, and I sent you both stat after this game. It's that Oklahoma has made the playoffs 5 times, 4 times under Lincoln Riley in the 4-team era, and now once under Brett Venables in the 12-team era. They are 0 for 5, and they have had 17-0 leads in 2 of those 5 losses. They lost both of them. They are 0-2 in the playoffs with a 17-point lead. They are 0-2. All other teams with a 17-0 lead are 28-0. They are the only team that's doing this, and they're doing it they're doing it at the biggest stage. And it didn't matter. You did it with offense. It's funny, like, you'd think at least an offensive team with bad defense would be more likely to not get your butt kicked because you think you can at least put up points, right? But then it's the opposite, right? Oh no, we're playing a real defense now, not a Big 12 defense, and we can't score, but also we already can't defend, so you get blown out. And now it's the opposite. We can't score at all, so our defense and our special teams are keeping us in this game, but eventually you're not playing Mississippi State here, right? You can't win games on blocked punts alone. And I think the really concerning thing to me was, like, when they started to blow it with that muffed punt, it didn't get blocked. It wasn't really that bad of a snap. It wasn't anything crazy. He picked it up.
He caught it, right? Didn't he catch it first?
He just dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And as soon as that happened, I was like, great, all my alternate spreads are cooked. Alabama's at least about to come back and make this respectable. The other thing that I want to mention, which Robert mentioned, is we looked at this game 2 ways, right? And I was wrong on this game. Like I always admit when I was wrong on a read on this game. I had Oklahoma. I thought that Oklahoma would be able to get up just enough points because other teams who have been struggling down the stretch, like Auburn, right? It wasn't a high-scoring game, but Auburn did get points up. Oklahoma's supposed to be better than Auburn, right? And so I thought, look, Alabama has just been falling apart the last 4. Could have lost to Auburn, got destroyed by Georgia in the championship game, right? I took a flyer on this defense. And instead, what we saw was, I think I came away with the takeaway of what? that first game that they won, 24-20, that might have been the fluke. If we replay that game 9 out of 10 times, Bama wins it. Like you get some turnover luck, right? Reverse a blocked kick, reverse a turnover, right? And all of a sudden, Bama's winning handily, right? These things happen in college football. So yeah, I just don't know where you go if you're Oklahoma, because it's who are you going to hire if you were to get rid of Brett Venables, right? He still took you to the playoff. You went 10-3, which was better than anybody had you at. You still beat Alabama in the regular season. You beat Michigan. It's not like you didn't just run through like some MAC schedule, right? So you're in a tough spot because if you get rid of Venables, and who's going to do better? It's like it's the James Franklin dilemma, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to do better?
Yep. No, it's funny. I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys, but Venables went from unranked to solidly a column 3 coach in that thing. It's like the fatally flawed column with Sark and Riley and those kind of guys, where it's okay, they would absolutely crush it at a G5 program, and then they hit a hard ceiling. Didn't it seem, this is a dumb thing for a podcast that's based on being sharper in numbers and stuff, but my gosh, it seemed like just based on the halftime interviews that Alabama was going to win, because DeBoer was like so calm being on the road, and Venables was still like trying to hype up the sideline reporter, not realizing that she doesn't play for him. Did it seem that way?
It did. And I think, like, I had a friend who was at the game, and so we were getting, like, live text, and it went from, holy smokes, like, we were just, like, absolutely stomping on them, they're falling apart, and then it went, like, immediately, as soon as the block punt happened, it was, like, this game will be tied before halftime, and then it was tied, and it's like, if we keep this within 10, we'll be lucky. Like, the entire atmosphere of that building just went dead, and I think, like, in games like this, you've blown a big lead like this, you basically have one chance to get the momentum back. So it's 17-0. You have one chance coming out of the half is get a stop, get a score, crowd comes back into it. Instead, you don't get a stop. You let them score, and you don't score anymore. And then the crowd says, yeah, we were right. This is over. And that's all you can do. The momentum just carried Alabama from there. You got to be tough in these games. You got to be mentally tough in these playoffs. I've said it a million times. Things are not going to go your way every single play, every single quarter. You have to be ready for those kind of things, and Oklahoma just wasn't, and Alabama was.
Yeah, I agree, and just I hate to be just overly simplify things, and the next game kind of contradicts this, but a lot of the time it just comes down to the coaches. Robert, anything more on this one, or should we move on to Miami?
No, I think we can. I will say this was probably, even in this case where it was like functionally 2 blowouts, a blowout for one for Oklahoma and then a blowout for Alabama, it was, I think, it's probably the best first round game ever so far. Again, very low bar, but still though, that is an accomplishment.
Yep. All right. So Saturday morning we got the most rock fight of rock fights. Miami with a 10-3 win. Miami with, I guess I would say, out of character, a late touchdown to not put this one away, but to take a very late lead. And then Cristobal really tried to, just as Hambone said, just to run his magic. And he came so close. And I don't know if you guys noticed this in all the, all of the activity. I believe it was literally it would wind up being Texas A&M's last offensive play. Greg McElroy says, if I'm Mario Cristobal, I take a timeout here. My defense is worn out. And then, lo and behold, they pick off a pass just to put the game away. So many things here. You've got Mario was unsuccessful in trying to do the Mario thing. And boy, A&M really just solidified the data points that we hit on of a possible narrative about, geez, you played one good team in the SEC. They beat you by 2 scores, and the Notre Dame team that you beat is nowhere near the Notre Dame team at the end of the season. And they improved, but I don't want to say this about every team that loses in the first, or that just loses, period, but boy, just rinse and repeat with what I said about Oklahoma. Much better finish than I expected. They made the playoff, which I thought was an outside possibility. You look back at the resume for this season, and it's not the most impressive one of the top 12. How about we say of the second 6 in the top 12? Robert?
Yeah, just a quick note here. We'll talk about this game specifically, but just a very quick future note to tuck away. Next season, Texas A&M plays a much tougher schedule than they did this year. I think, obviously, they play Texas. I think I saw Oklahoma and Georgia on that schedule, so that's already more difficult than this year's schedule.
Well, it has to
Um,
be.
yeah, you can't really go down from that.
No.
But this is the thing, right? And we talked about this. Now it's weird how this game went because we're like, hey, I don't think this Texas A&M defense is good. And when you look at it, you're like, oh wow, they only allowed 10 points. Yeah, but how many points of field goals did Miami miss? Like 12 or something? Like at least 12, I think. At
Yeah.
least 3 field goals, I think. Right?
Yeah, there
So
were at
I mean,
least three misses. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is that like they just Miami was a bit shaky on offense. I'm not specifically sure why they were a bit shaky on offense.
Go on.
I don't know. They're playing on New Year's Eve now against Ohio State. So if they're not good on offense, then that's going to be rough against Ohio State.
Yes.
That's going to be like.
Don't spoil
Now
the
again,
pod, but yeah.
It's in a bowl. It's in a bowl though. It's like in a dome. It's not a bowl. It is a bowl, of course. But it's in a dome. It's in Jerry's World there in Dallas. So there will not be like massive winds. But like Carson Beck.
We'll have to check what time it is because you could have the sun
The
coming
sun.
in through the window and it gets in Mario Cristobal's eyes and you can't see the play sheet.
Yeah, no, that is actually a thing. But I think this one is pretty late though. This is I think a 7:30 or 8:30 kick, so Eastern time. But no, it's so crazy when you think about it. It's Texas A&M's offense just got completely shut down. And if Miami can do something similar to that to Ohio State's offense, which looked a bit shaky there against Indiana, hey, maybe Miami's got something there. Maybe they can at least keep it close. Their defense was very clearly good. They just completely shut down Texas A&M's offense. And while Carson Beck was pretty shaky, like running the ball was pretty effective. They should have just kept running the ball and just running it. And when they finally realized, like midway through the third quarter, hey, we can just run the ball a lot, and then they were starting to do stuff. And it's just like, why didn't you do this before? Why were you just, we have to throw the ball in these 20-mile-an-hour winds. Let's do that, yeah. But it was an interesting game, and I want to see what Miami could do now. But again, I was heavily on Miami in this game, completely proven right on. That was a great call, and yeah, I'm very happy for that call that a lot of us had on that. I think we all had that call for Miami.
You talked me into it. I didn't play it, but I think Isaiah, you were pretty early on that too, weren't you?
I had Miami plus 3.5 in money line on it.
Wow. Anything else on this one from your standpoint?
Yeah, this is, I think, with Texas A&M, I'm the same place I was with Indiana last year. Absolutely deserved to get in. 11-1 SEC team, always going to get into a 12-team field. Don't have any problems with that. Still beat Notre Dame, still beat South Florida, still beat Pittsburgh, so you have multiple wins. That is honestly better resume than Indiana had last year, other than the fact that you have lost 2 games. That's the difference, right? Or, oh yeah, no, they were 10-2. But same thing, like in most cases, a 10-2 team. No, they did only. Yeah, I'm thinking Miami has 2 losses. Miami has 2 losses. But yeah, 11-1 team, they're always going to get in. And you can't use the results of the playoff to then go back and say that team didn't deserve to get in. It just doesn't work that way. These were 2 really good teams that had great seasons, and one of them just had a fatal flaw that all 3 of us pointed out, is that we didn't know if they were battle tested. We knew, for me, the biggest driver of betting Miami was actually their lines. Just, I said it multiple times, those lines are basically, you could just pick them up and put them in the NFL, and they're basically ready to go. And this game was completely dominated by Miami on the line. They annihilated Texas A&M in the trenches. That's why Texas A&M couldn't run. That's why why the quarterback was under so much pressure. And then when it came down to it, it's also one of those games where you have 2 quarterbacks where it's like when one of them makes a mistake, it opens the can of worms, right? It's like trying to eat one pistachio, right? You can't eat one pistachio, then you go back to the bag and you get another one. Marcel Reed, he threw 1 pick. He wasn't just was he only throw 1 pick, or was he going to come back and throw another one? And Miami brought all that pressure on that critical play at the end of the game, and he made a bad throw. And that's in a defensive game like this. That's all you can do. As far as the Mario narrative goes, it's weird. I actually feel a little bit bad for Mario in this one because I think he was in a lose situation. Now, as me, a Green Bay Packers fan, would like to tell you, I would love if coaches would stop using prevent defense. That would be really cool if we could stop running prevent defense. So that's on Miami to just let them walk down the field. But, like, you had 2 options, right? Everyone was like, why is he scoring? Why is he scoring? Why didn't he take the knee? It's the Georgia Tech game again. This is the exact same thing. And no, it really isn't, because their kicker missed four field goals, including one that was, like, not a hard kick to make, even with the win. Like you should have made that one. So you are put in a position where, okay, he takes the knee, it's a tie game, and you kick the field goal and he misses. And then everybody goes, what the heck, man? Your kicker missed 4 field goals. You had 7 points right there and you went down, right? So I do feel like he was in a no-win spot there, and it worked out for them in the end. It almost didn't. I don't think I would have considered it the same level of Marioing that we have seen in other games. You better
But
not do that. You better not do that against Ohio State, though. You better not play
no.
prevent defense against. If you're up 3 on Ohio State with a minute left to go and you drop back in cushion zone, congrats, you've lost the game. So we'll save some of that we'll save that mainly for the pod, but I think that's where I am on Miami again. Two pretty similar teams, and one of them won exactly the way we thought they would. Big Ten West rides again.
One last little fun thing for this. So and as I said before, I normally don't watch college football game day, but I think I can't remember. I was doing work and I was going to go up and cook lunch, so I was actually watching game day just a little bit before this game, and they did the segment where Pat McAfee has the guy try to kick a field goal to win money or something. And because there was college game day there at College Station, he was kicking the field goal. And actually, the random person kicking the field goal was more accurate than some of the field goals we saw later in that game. Like, actually, he was closer. He was far closer. I'm sure there's probably a video of it online. Go find it. He actually was relatively close. And then I was like, oh, okay, whatever, just some random guy. Of course he can miss, right? Maybe there's some wind. I'm sure the professionals will be able to make those kicks, just they couldn't. All day. They couldn't make a single kick until the second half.
Yeah, because Texas A&M missed. Did they miss 1 or 2? Because Texas A&M had some misses.
At least 2 or 3. They missed
But
a couple too.
the one thing I did question Mario on was your kicker missed 3 kicks. Why are you sending him out? Like at that point, he has the yips. And they kept saying there's a backup. It's not like it was like a quarterback that's going out there to kick the field goal. So like, why are you sending this poor kid out there? He's missed 3 kicks. He misses a 4th one, and it's like you want somebody to do something bad or something. Like, come on, man, give the kid a break.
I'm going to push back on the feeling sorry for Mario narrative, because when I talk about his magic, most of what you talked about I wasn't even thinking of. I was thinking about literally like somehow Malachi Toney, his most valuable offensive player, had that key fumble that kind of should have lost the game, but the defense wouldn't allow it. And then the late hit to the head penalty was so reminiscent of that dumb penalty at SMU that cost him there. But it didn't. But boy, there was a lot of Mario in that fourth quarter. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Fair.
All right.
Yeah, that was bad. That was bad.
There will be more Mario to come.
Yes. All right. Now we go down a decibel or two in terms of the quality of play. Tulane only 31 points shy of overtime against Ole Miss. We said this would go one of two ways. Either Ole Miss just runs away from them from the start, or it's a game and until late. And this was not a game even early. It's just, I don't know what you can say about this other than was Trinidad Chambliss. I don't know. I was looking that up. I don't know if he's healthy or what his status is. Just either.
No, I don't.
I don't know.
Was he injured in the game?
Yeah, because Austin Simmons came in, and at that point I didn't watch it because it was just getting gruesome, and I don't know if Chambliss came back in.
Let's see here. And they said he was checked for concussion.
He's got a couple weeks.
He was in the injury tent on the sideline for about 4 minutes and then returned to the sideline. Yeah, it looks like the thing too is it's hard to read into that because they were already up by $1 billion. So, like,
yeah,
why would you?
Yeah, the interesting thing about this game was that the scoreboard looks pretty bad, but the yards per play was actually not that bad, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Tulane was actually able to mostly punch back. They just couldn't finish the punch. They couldn't punch it through the end zone. Ole Miss had no problem scoring, but Tulane was doing things. They were not completely. They'd be moving the ball, and all of a sudden they'd get to the fourth down somewhere, and then all of a sudden it's we missed the fourth down, we couldn't convert it, or we missed the field goal or something, and then Ole Miss just marches down the field and scores. Right? It was slightly more competitive than it looked, but again, no. This is the thing. It's my one question for the game, and one of the reasons why we had said, hey, this one could be interesting, was we needed to see what this team looked like without Lane Kiffin. And apparently it was I'm fairly sure this game is functionally a carbon copy of the last game that these two teams played. Yeah, this is now going to be very interesting. Ole Miss Georgia rematch. That's actually interesting. I think That one I'm gonna have some stuff to say about.
Yeah. Isaiah?
Yeah, 45-10 was the regular season game. So
Okay.
essentially the same thing, except for Ole Miss played with a backup quarterback for a half and scored more points in the second half than they did in the first half. I I was on Ole Miss on this one. I had said my reasoning for it, and I watched the first drive because what basically ended up happening, why the stat sheet looks totally off from the score, is that Tulane basically went down the entire field on their like Ole Miss scored in 3 plays, and then Tulane got into the red zone. They got to the 10-yard line, and then they threw a pick in the end zone. So you got all those yards, and then they did it again. Like they went the entire field, didn't score, then they went the entire field, got a field goal. Right, so you're racking up all these yards, but you just never felt like they were scoring. So like after that pick in the end zone, I said, yeah, this is over, and it was. Again, really good team in Tulane. The G5 is just what happens when G5 teams play in these playoffs. Look at how irrelevant a guy like Lane Kiffin is. How many teams could you take a coach away from, like Lane Kiffin, away from in the regular season in a conference game and expect this kind of result anywhere? I wonder if there's a little credence to my idea that I had put out that like Ole Miss is saying, hey, the way you left, the way you try to be like, oh, this is their fault. I'm not quitting. They're pushing me out, right? Part of me feels like they played with a little bit of no, you quit, like you're gone, and we're not you. We are still a playoff team, and we can still win this game by a lot of points. And I thought that was impressive. And we'll see what happens against Georgia. You're playing a really good defense. You're also playing a team that you never beat. Like they just do not beat Kirby Smart. It will be really funny if an interim coach beats Kirby Smart when Lane Kiffin could never do it. That would be really funny. And if we'll go into that when we get to Ole Miss, but I think that's a game that's absolutely 100% worth watching. I'm not writing it off the way I think I was looking at it before I saw this game. I was impressed with Ole Miss.
Yeah, one team that I think actually, if they lost their head coach, and they would do equally as well as they did in the regular season as in the playoff, would be UTEP. But that's a different kind of scale that we're grading on there. It's because that coach is so freaking bad. He's the new comedy crutch for bad coaching. Scotty Walden. All right, the last one. The most expected outcome here of the four, Oregon over James Madison handsomely. It's funny, I heard Bill Connolly, the great Bill Connolly, the creator of SP Plus that ESPN uses, the good ESPN metric that they hide, not the crappy one that they throw at you, FPI. It's funny, on this pod, they said JMU's got no chance. And he tried to make a case saying, Chesney will just try to do a bend, don't break, and really just win third down and so on. And I kept that in mind because Oregon got the third down only once in the first half. This was that bad. What else can you say about that? That kind of paints the whole picture right there. I think Oregon scored every time they had the ball until that weird pick. That weird pick where it's like it hit a body part that it shouldn't have and it bounced right to a Duke's defender. I can't take anything away from this game at all. I'll bring this up. During this game, not because of this game, but I thought this, and I'm curious about both your guys' opinions on this. Last year, even though Oregon was undefeated and they were number one for a good part of the season, I don't remember if it was the whole season, I kept on pointing out that their defense, like the last 6 weeks, their defense at one point was like number 3 in the country, and I had them just every week just going down a spot or two. And I was concerned about it. And what's weird is this team is allegedly number 5. Last year's was number 1, but I think this team is way better and has a much better chance. Now, it's easy to say looking back on how bad they were against Ohio State, but even just blind resume to blind resume, I just think this team's way better than last year's Oregon team. Robert, I'll ask you because even though being a kind Canadian, you somehow have adopted this team.
Yeah, it's funny because of the two, like Ole Miss versus Tulane, Oregon didn't cover the spread, and yet I somehow think it was in some ways a more dominant win because it's very clear. Look, they have 28 of James Madison's points came in the third and fourth quarter. Oregon very clearly just said we don't care, whatever. They're like whatever, it doesn't matter, and that's fine. But yeah, I'm very impressed with them. They very clearly came out with some fire in their bellies. We're like, we're going to put this game away. And they did that right off the bat. Going for the 2-point conversion first, right off the bat, too. That one was interesting as well, trying to set the tone early. In terms of is this Oregon team better than last year's, I'm starting to believe it a little bit. Because I was thinking like last year, we were like, oh, well. Yeah, because I remember I've been thinking a bit about last year's season and about the game versus Ohio State in the Rose Bowl where they got blown out. And I was like, oh man, like that was just a rough game for them. But I'm like, yeah, but like Dylan Gabriel was like okay, but never like amazing. I'm fairly sure Dante Moore is far better. Look at Dylan Gabriel
Yeah.
now. Dylan Gabriel is, I guess, roughly the third string quarterback on the Browns. It's unclear exactly what. There's no way to actually know who their starting quarterback is at any given time or what their depth chart is. But he's like roughly the third string quarterback. And Dante Moore is being talked about as like a top whatever pick in the NFL draft, right? Like Dylan Gabriel went, I think, in the third or fourth or fifth round, something like that. I think third or fourth. So this is the thing, right? Dante Moore's a better quarterback. I think the defense is a little better too. And
Much better,
I
yeah.
think, yeah, and just overall, the offense is just really good, and I think it's clicking a lot better. It would have been so easy for Oregon to just come into this game and just be like, we're just going to run for 300 yards and kill you. But Dante Moore threw 4 touchdown passes, which I was a little surprised at. I didn't expect him to come out swinging that much. Because why would you? You don't need to, right? You could just hand the ball off, kill the clock, and run for 300 yards against JMU and just kill them. But they just didn't do that. So that was interesting that they went for the more flashy things. Now, of course, it killed them in the back end with the defense, but I don't think you can. I'm not seriously judging their defense in the back half. I don't think they cared. Like at a certain point,
Yeah.
they very clearly were like, whatever.
No,
The
yeah.
exact score of this game doesn't matter. But no, Oregon versus Texas Tech. I think Oregon is the slight favorite in that game.
Yeah.
I'm actually, yeah, I'm excited. Honestly, all 4 quarterfinal games. And again, this is probably a direct result of them fixing the seeding from last year.
Yeah.
All 4 of these are actually going to be pretty good games.
Isaiah, I'm curious if you could tell me what you think about my idiot conspiracy theory, which is Dan Lanning, before the season, took Tosh Lapoy aside and said, look, I'm going to run this defense, but this is our little secret, and it's going to be so good that you're going to get a job this year. I seriously, I think there's like a 45% chance that actually happened.
Yeah, they've just been so underrated on defense all year because, again, people get into their mindsets of what a team is supposed to be. Like, Oregon is supposed to be the big, flashy, throw a bunch of points team. But if they were the big, flashy, score a bunch of points team, they would have lost at Iowa. And
Exactly. Yeah.
they could have lost by more to Indiana. I think that this identity that they've carved out for them has made them more resilient, and that's what makes them a better team.
Yep.
I can look at this roster and say the roster, maybe just on like raw talent, is not better than last year, but I think this team plays better than last year. I think they fit together better, and like people are going to say they lost at home by 10, so they're not better. But again, you lost to Indiana and everybody lost it. Like Ohio State lost to Indiana, so is Ohio State not good because they lost to Indiana? You can't really do that. That's why I'm really high on this Oregon team. Before this thing started, I took them as my bet to win the playoff. I think they've shown a lot through the season, and I think they took care of business here. Now they didn't cover in this game. I'm not super upset about it. I'm sorry they were up, but they were up 48-20 going into the fourth quarter. I had -20. It took JMU a 99-yard, 9-play drive with a minute left in the game to cover. That's one where you look at the read and say, you know what, I think I got that one right. I'm not mad.
Yeah.
It's the same thing functionally that we saw from the Ole Miss games, that these people, teams just, they do belong because that's the criteria. That is the rules. They do belong, but they don't belong on the same field.
Yeah. Good point about being on the right side, although not showing up in the ledger. I don't think a lot of people really, or enough people appreciate that. All right, so after the games, Robert reran his ratings. Or rankings here. We'll go over them here. I guess, Robert, first of all, looking at these, I just picked the remaining playoff teams. Anything that your gut or your brain doesn't agree with what your model says?
Actually, I'll say straight up that it's interesting that all of them are like, it's basically 1 through 6, and then two more. It works out really nicely that way. Actually, it basically. Just a quick side note, because when we had the slide before for the quarterfinal previews, I had not rerun the ranking after last week, mostly because there's like 3 games that were relevant to it, so I didn't rerun that. So technically, it always had Indiana as 2 and Ohio State as 1. Again, they were even at that point they were 1/10 of a point off. Indiana opening up a bit more of a lead there now with a .303. So it's a bit better. But no, again, like this ranking looks right to me. I think this is pretty accurate. It's weird. It's so low on Ole Miss. I would have expected to be a bit higher on Ole Miss than that. But yeah, this looks right to me. And I think honestly, it's hard to disagree with the top 3 teams being from the Big Ten. I think that's a very hard. It's very hard to disagree with that based on what we saw with Texas A&M and Oklahoma, and from that on the field. And I think that the next up there is Miami, Florida. They definitely like they were like yeah okay they only won by 7, but they were a far better team than Texas A&M on that field. So I think that makes sense. That the ranking here makes sense to me.
Yeah, two things. Like the latter half of the season, our models were both lower on Ole Miss than the committee rankings, or just the pollsters as well. I might flip Miami and Texas Tech, although I don't feel strongly. And you've got them so close here, anyways. It probably doesn't even matter.
Oh four.
Yeah. So I don't know, Isaiah. Anything that you want to change in Robert's rankings here?
Yeah, I would also give Ole Miss a little bit of credit. I don't think you don't have to argue that Ole Miss should be above Alabama. I'm fine with them being below it, but 7 spots after again completely covered the spread. Did not look like they had any issues other than when they had a couple of defensive drives to start the game, and then it was whatever it is. They got the turnovers, they stopped the score. That's what matters. And these rankings do not take into account injuries, right? So you can't use we're down on Ole Miss because the quarterback could be out. So yeah, I don't really understand that. And I think if Ole Miss and Alabama were to play each other, and you were to give me a line that was 7 spots apart, I would take Ole Miss to cover that. That's my thoughts on those teams. I don't think it's egregious. It's just a little weird. I'm a Big Ten guy. I've said this all season long. The 3 best teams are in the Big Ten, and I don't think it's particularly close. I think Georgia's a great team. I think Miami's a great team, but I look at the top 3 and Indiana and Ohio State. Like even if you still for some reason aren't big on Oregon, Indiana and Ohio State have been there the entire season, alternating between 1 and 2. Not until the end of the season when they flipped, but they were basically at 1 and 2 the entire season. And truthfully, we're never in any danger of losing those spots. And now you've got Oregon, which has done what we told people that they're going to do in the first round. They get their chance now to show that this is where it is. But I totally agree with them on where these the top 3 are here.
Actually, just a quick point on that, just to further your point. The difference between 1 and 3 is smaller than the difference between 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole point, right? That's the point we're trying to make. And that's the whole people saying that, oh, the SEC is better than the Big Ten. That's the point they don't make. They're like, oh, we have 6 of the top 15. I'm like, I don't care. 1, 2, 3 are better than all of them.
I care about who's winning the national title. And
Yeah.
sorry, Vanderbilt, you're not winning the national title. So I don't care that you're 9 or 10 or whatever. That's irrelevant.
Yeah.
And if there are 2 things that you do in betting, right? You never take this team or the field. You always take the field, right? So if the bet was Indiana or the field, you take the field. If the bet was Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, or the field, I would be putting my 401k on Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon. Like, there is a clear separation here. And I respect Georgia. I respect what Kirby does every year and how consistent they are. But that is just a fact, and the models completely back it up.
I will just say that just to defend our friends south of the Mason-Dixon line, plus our friends in Lexington, you two are officially snobs if you only care about the national champions, okay?
Oh, I didn't say that. No, I love Bowling Green at Ball State.
There you go.
Love.
All right.
But for the purposes of betting this playoff, I don't care about you, Vanderbilt. I don't care about you, Diego Pavia. You can go away. Bye-bye.
I think Diego Pavia might have some spicy language for you in response. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah, my 3 or 4 Fernando Mendoza to win the Heisman tickets say otherwise.
Okay. Wow. He'll have more spicy language. I don't think you might be right, but you're getting the spicy language no matter what. All right, let's talk about some round 2 games. I believe this is the Cotton Bowl, Miami at Ohio State, who was a 10-point favorite on Friday night. How about that? Ryan Day, as we joked about on the New Year's Eve game. Awesome. These lines were as of about openish, so I don't know if these have moved since, but Ohio State giving 10. Low total of 41.5. Almost a little bit of a Big Ten West tint here, especially with the way Miami's offense played recently. Just grab my laser pointer here for the first time today. Give me one moment. Come on, sweetheart. I don't think... Nope. One more time here. There we go. All right. Ohio State with the better quarterback play, really no surprise, as I've been crushing Carson Beck all season. This is interesting to me here. Ohio State actually with a better running game, and that I think is a reflection of Miami. And I don't have an explanation for that other than this is adjusted for strength of opponent, so maybe just going against Big Ten defenses gives Ohio State a boost when we normalize across FBS. Interesting also, Miami a little more explosive in the passing game, considering Ohio State, people basically feel that either they or Indiana or USC have the best group of receivers. Miami's kind of a one-trick passing game in terms of the receivers. Miami basically, from the descriptives and not predictives, staying toe-to-toe with Ohio State in terms of pass defense and run defense. This is one of those games, again, we've been saying it again and again in terms of the predictives. The one unit that figures to have a problem showing up in this one is the Miami offense. Goes in line with kind of what I've been saying the last month or so. The models, Athena has Ohio State by 10. Robert, you have Ohio State by 6, as does BuckMetrics in a much lower scoring game. I guess my thought is, I've said this like a million times, I see Carson Beck struggling against this pass defense. I don't think that he's seen a pass defense that's even close to this. The Notre Dame team that he faced is nowhere near what Notre Dame was basically the last month of the season. And I think that's all the difference we have right here.
Would you pick Miami to beat Notre Dame if the game was held tomorrow?
Oh, no way. I would,
Exactly.
if I would give, I'd comfortably give 9.5 if I had Notre Dame. That's a really good point. I'm tempted to, if this goes below 10, I might be tempted a little bit on Ohio State, but I can't make a case for Miami here. What about you, Robert?
One thing I will say here, though, is that I agree with the assessment. One thing I will say, though, is that Ohio State, points against Texas, a good defense, 14. Points against Indiana, another good defense, 10. We're getting 10 here, right? So we're in that range of if Miami scores. Again, obviously, Miami's defense is probably not as good as Indiana's defense, but it's comparable at least.
It's close.
It's closer.
It's in the same zip code, not even area code. We'll say in the same zip code.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
How about, all right, political pollster guy, how about they're in the same precinct?
There you go. That makes sense, yes.
Margin of error.
Yeah, zip codes are, your zip codes are pretty small. They're like, they're like a couple blocks, I guess. I don't know. But it depends on the zip code. But no, it's comparable. And I think that, like, we saw Miami's defense wreck Texas A&M's really good offense. That was the one thing that they had been good at, was offense. And Texas A&M's defense had been really hurting them. They had been basically keeping them into the games. Their defense had been stopping them from putting these games away. Their offense had been carrying them in those games, and Miami completely shut them down. 3 points. Now, there was some times where they could have done better. They missed a couple field goals as well. But also I think some of those were off of offensive turnovers. Like, Miami's offense just did not have a very good game at all, which is, if I remember correctly, Mario's side of the ball. That's a little concerning. I will say, though, is it possible that was the Mario Cristobal game? That was the Mario Cristobal does something weird game, and yet they still were able to overpower Texas A&M. And that now maybe they can actually figure out something against Ohio State's defense, and if they can actually shut down Ohio State offensively, maybe there's a shot, right? I don't know. Here's the thing. What I will say is this. I am fairly sure that after the result that we saw there on Saturday, that everyone is going to be betting Ohio State in this game. Ohio State's going to be getting like 75, 80, 85% of the money and spread bets in the money in this game. And I will say that we have seen Julian Sain go against good defenses basically twice, and in both of those they failed to score 3 touchdowns. And you're giving me 10 points in this game. I think the play is Miami here. If you're going to bet a spread Miami here, and like maybe a small taste of, it's crazy, but maybe a small taste of money line, maybe. But like, Ohio State has not been nearly, like, they've been dominant in the games we've seen, but those have been against like just whatever teams. Like, even the Penn State game was close for a while there. They eventually won and covered that game. But there are a lot of games this year that Ohio State has just dominated, but the second they play an even remotely good defense in Texas and in Indiana, they just could do nothing. And I think if you're Ohio State and you're that Miami defense, if you're looking there and you're like, we can mess with Julian Sain. And not only that, it's on the road too. You're not at home. I'm actually fairly sure that Miami is closer than Ohio. I think Miami has a closer distance to travel than Ohio State does.
It probably is.
Go ahead.
It
Oh,
probably
okay. Oh, it
is.
probably is. It probably is. I think it is. But what I will say though is that because Ohio State Open Air Stadium would be very cold there right now in Ohio State. I'm not exactly in Ohio State, but I'm basically in Ohio State in Canada here. It's cold here too. I'm sure it's cold in Ohio, but you're going to be inside a dome. And basically, Miami Stadium, okay, yeah, it's not a dome, but it's very warm down there in Miami, so there's always warm conditions. Their conditions are going to be a lot closer to the Miami Stadium than they are to the Ohio State area right now. So that's all I'll say is that I think Miami's got a shot here. Is it a great shot? No, but again, we both have 6 here. We both have 6, and that is some value on. It's not a bet on a spread of 10, but it's a consider it on a spread of 10.
Let me just give an alternate hypothesis on why I'm just going to toss that Indiana game. You make a good point about them scoring 10 points. During that, first of all, I don't even think they cared about that game. They have nothing, and I think Indiana, that meant 100 times more to Indiana than Ohio State. Also, at that time, you had basically Brian Hartline dealing with becoming the next South Florida coach. And at that same time, related, is the fact that they exceptionally were dealing with signing day issues going up to that. They actually lost like their number 2 receiver in the recruiting class to USC. Their top guy, Chris Henry Jr., actually didn't turn in his letter and was rumored to be going to Oregon or USC or even South Florida to leave to go with Brian Hartline. So I think you got like the absolute most turd effort that you're going to get from Ohio State this year. So now, when I have to make an excuse also for the Texas game, I feel like a little bit of a skunk. Because now it's Your Honor. Also, the second DUI, what that really happened was, it's a little thin, but I'm just going to toss that Indiana game just for a bunch of reasons. But you do make a good point, except I can't buy the whole we passed the Mario game. There's always another Mario game lurking. So, Isaiah, you were nodding when Robert said that, and I agree with this too, that the vast majority of money is going to be on Ohio State. Does that make it
It
bettable
is.
the other way?
It's really tough. This number is right at the cutoff where I like either side. So like it was at 9.5 and I lean towards Ohio State at 9.5. Now I'm seeing 10.5 where it's okay, we're above the key number. And I go through the different ways this game could go because I do think Miami showed just how good that defense is at Texas A&M. Even if you play a schedule argument for Texas A&M, to go into College Station and just walk out into the field and say, you're just not scoring today, that's really impressive in such a high profile, high stress environment. Like, again, that's the game where Mario normally screws it up. And even though they tried, they didn't. And you have to look at those lines again because the defensive and the offensive line for Miami is just ridiculous. And the only team that Ohio State played with lines anywhere near that quality was Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And not only did they only score 10 points, they really weren't close to scoring more. Yeah, at the end they had a chance and they screwed it up, but it felt like watching the Miami Texas A&M game, where the only difference was that Ohio State got an early lead, but then Indiana just put the clamps on. The other side of that is Indiana made an in-game adjustment because Kirk Cinetti is a very smart and very good and very calculating coach. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think Mario Cristobal is capable of making the same
Yes.
in-game adjustments as Kurt Signetti. So that's
Yeah.
like the two arguments. When I'm looking at schedule, that Texas win got better than it looked, but it never became a this is a team that beat Texas, right? They can win a
No.
title because they beat Texas. They can win a title because they have so much talent and because they're well coached. But nobody's looking at a 14-7 win at home over Texas and saying that's the one. Then you got the Michigan win, which was on the road. You got that monkey off your back. But this is a Michigan team that we've now found out was in like internal chaos, and I don't know who knew what and whatever. But like, I think if they had lost to Michigan, first of all, we don't even know would Sharon Moore have been fired. We don't know. But let's say he was. Still, would the vibes be like? If I were an Ohio State fan, I would be like, "Oh my gosh, Indiana is a." Now, you wouldn't be in. Actually, I don't know if you'd be in. You'd have to look at the tiebreak. You might not even be in the Big Ten championship game. Then we look at the rest of the schedule. At Washington, is that their best win? It's home Washington, but then Minnesota, at Illinois, who couldn't stop a nosebleed, Wisconsin, Penn State, Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers. That's worse than an ACC schedule for some draws that you can get in the ACC, in my opinion. So I think there's an argument to say that this Miami team is really going to give them something that they've not seen before. And the other thing I want to know is that I really don't trust right now. So the only thing I don't trust with Ohio State on right now is who is calling the offensive plays. If Brian Hartline is calling the offensive play, excuse me. If Brian Hartline is calling the offensive plays, I like Miami plus 10. Hate when coaches are going out the door and they don't just leave. Like, again, if I were the coach, you come to me and you say, I'm taking the Florida job, that's awesome. Great for you. I'm glad that I got you to a place where you can be a head coach. There's the door. Goodbye. Because I've heard people saying, like, he's talking to our players. He's trying to get them to come. He's talking to our recruits. He's trying to get them to come. And his play calling was awful in that Ohio State Indiana game. It made no sense. They were doing really stupid stuff, especially on that last drive. You're finally getting the run game going a little bit. You're getting some stuff on like short passes and some screens going. You're moving down the field, and you target not your wide receiver one, Jeremiah Smith, who like you can throw any ball at him and he's probably going to catch it. You didn't target your wide receiver two. You didn't even target your wide receiver three. You targeted this random guy who like what? How did we get to that read? How did we get to a play call where that's even a read? So that's I think that's what concerns me with Ohio State. Like on paper, the talent here is there for Ohio State to win this game. Ryan Day is a superior, not close, superior coach than Mario Cristobal. If Ohio State goes out there and plays their A-plus game, they'll win this game comfortably. I just don't know. Can we trust Ohio State in this spot? Can we trust this Ohio State team in this spot to cover a 10-point spread? I'm officially not going to make a recommendation on it because I just, again, if you told me Ohio State wins this by 20, I'd be like, okay, so they made normal play calls and they didn't turn the ball over. And the pistachio thing with Carson Beck happened. He threw a pick and then he threw another pick, right? And then it all went off the rails for Mario at that point. If you told me that Miami won this game, it would have to be like 13-10. But that's how it happens, right? I don't have an official play on this one. I'm really interested to see just how this Ohio State team looks, and I think I'm going to treat it similar to how I did with Oregon in the season. You go in, I don't care if you cover as far as the next round goes. I want you to win. I want to see how you win. Did you blow them out? Great. Ohio State's back. Did you have to battle back? Did you face some adversity? Did their defense frustrate you? And you got some scores in crunch time, and you won the game by 3. Okay, now you're a battle-tested team, and I feel great about that. So that's what I'm watching this game for.
You walked almost right up to where my next question was, because you make a really good point about the Miami defensive line especially, and I don't want to undersell how impressed I am by holding Indiana to 13 points. That's some serious defense. So any chance that this is an underplay, I'm a little bit interested in maybe that as something.
Yeah, I think I like the under more than the spread because I see so many. There's 2 paths for this under to hit. It's close, or Miami doesn't score. Those are the 2 paths for the under to hit. The only path for me personally to see this over hit is if Ohio State keeps the starters in a blowout and they start flexing on them. I don't think that you can do that to this Miami defense with the way Ohio State plays, like their mindset. It's not really to blow out teams like this. And I think Ryan Day, again, you're in the playoff. You have one of the buys. You beat Michigan. What reason do you have to keep Julian Sayin in this game if it's 30-3? You don't have any reason at all. So I think that's why the under. There's basically only one. If Miami puts up 24, 30 points, like red alarm on Ohio State. There is something wrong.
Yeah, I agree. Robert, anything else on this one?
No, I will say I'm right now I'm just trying to see because again it's funny you mentioned the 13-10 score. That was also the score Michigan beat Ohio State last year 13-10. So I'm just trying to see if there's a line of exact score Miami 13-10 on this. I'll get back to. Oh, there it is. Let's see.
Well, and it's relevant because that game. That's what I was talking about, right? With Miami, how does Miami win a close game? That game was my gosh, Ohio State is just so much better than Michigan. Like, it is so comical that these teams are on the same field together. But Ryan Day's brain is saying, wait, no, we can't win. We have to run the ball. We have to be the tougher team. Like, people are counting on us to show that Ohio State is just tougher than Michigan. And Michigan, with their 19th string quarterback, was like, oh, that's awesome because our pass defense is really good and you're not moving the ball at all. So we're just going to keep doing this until the fourth quarter when it's 10-10, and then you'll be tired and we'll win the game. And that's awesome.
350 to 1.
Yeah.
Do it.
Worth a couple dollars, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Buck's
Next
putting
game,
the whole
believe.
67 American on 10-30.
Yes. Oregon versus Texas Tech. This would be which bowl is this? Help me out
This
here.
is the Miami. This is the Orange Bowl in Miami.
This is noon-ish, New Year's Day.
Okay.
Early, no, 9 o'clock Eastern.
Wait, is the night game?
Oh, no, the schedule was wrong. I just clicked on the overhead schedule said 9 o'clock Eastern. It was not. It must have been Pacific. It must have been I don't know why we're showing Pacific time there, but thanks, Buck.
Yeah, so this is going to get a little getting used to the Orange Bowl being in the morning out here. Oregon giving one at Texas Tech. We lined this up a bit when we were doing the previews on both sides, both conferences. Oregon with a superior quarterback play here. Better running game. Texas Tech more explosive, and again, I've pointed this out before. That tends to be because they play up tempo, so they just have more plays, since that's a counting stat rather than an efficiency stat. Two of the best pass defenses you're going to see around. Actually, Texas Tech a lot better against the run. It's hard for me to make a case against Oregon here. Let's just get this out of the way. My model has this as an underplay, and Athena cosigns. Robert's model has it basically almost on the number. He's got a total of 51. Posted total is 52.5. So, with that out of the way, I'm not going to suddenly say, hey, guess what? The three best teams are in the Big Ten. But, I'm not going to say but. I think that, again, I brought this up about Texas Tech, not to fade them, but it's what's their best win to date. There's nothing there that compares to playing a Big Ten schedule. It's just, and not to piss on other conferences, there's just a difference here. And what this feels like to me is it feels like a cousin to where Oregon was last year, but on the other side of it, in that, all right, Oregon had to play a first round game. They get through it just like Ohio State last year. And then they go to a bowl game, and Texas Tech has just been hanging around. I don't think Texas Tech's defense is going to allow them to give up a lot of those points earlier, but I don't see this one as particularly like a field goal or closer than that. I guess I kind of default to Athena here, where my mind sees it closer to like 10-point game than a 1-point game. And Robert, you've got about a touchdown. Does that feel right? Do you think even that's maybe a little short?
Again, I could see the Oregon blows it out game, and I think that's a possibility. I think mine is fair. I think I'd probably rather have the 7 is. I think the 7 to 10 is roughly what the Athena model has. I think that's probably closer to what my model has. I think those two are close together. Your model with 4 just seems a little short there. But that's fair. I actually do like the under in this game. I think we've seen Oregon against good defenses not score a ton of points. Indiana, Iowa, Texas Tech, probably one of the better defenses Oregon will have played all season. That doesn't stop them from winning this game, though. But how many times have we cashed a Texas Tech under that people don't think that's how that works? But Texas Tech is actually an under team. They've actually been an under machine. Yeah. Now most of that has been massive blowouts where it's 30 to 10. Oh, okay, that's only 40 points. The total was 52, so we win. That's what the Texas Tech games have been basically. But no, I don't hate an under here. I think Oregon's going to win this game. I love Oregon money line in this game. -1 if you whatever. I don't really think there's a huge difference there. But yeah, I wouldn't mind an Oregon in an under 52. I think 52 is quite a lot of points here. I think if Oregon wins this game, they have a week to prepare for Indiana. I think if they're ahead in this game, if they're up a couple scores, they're just going to say, all right, whatever, we're just going to run the clock down. We don't need to do much here. We've got to get ready for the next game. We got ready for Indiana again. And Texas Tech's offense has been sneakily not great. Again, the Big 12 is generally referred to as the video game conference. That's generally what you refer to it as, where it's, we're putting up video game numbers in these games. Texas Tech is not that. Texas Tech will win through defense. It gets a ton of short fields and then scores on the short fields. They're not putting up 50 points a game like Oklahoma of past years. So like their Texas Tech's offense isn't great. They're finally going up against a team that can actually shut them down on offense, on defense rather, and Oregon can actually be possibly shut down by Texas Tech's defense here. So this should be a good game. But yeah, I think Oregon in the 7-10 -1 seems a bit low. I think Oregon should be able to win this at least by a score. And yeah, like Oregon something and the 52 under 52.5. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, look, and I'm just going to hit play what I recorded and what I said about the last game, which is the other team hasn't seen anything like a Big Ten passing defense that Oregon offers here. I just, what's the best passing defense that Texas Tech has faced? BYU. They're several steps below what Oregon's pass defense is. I think that there's a bit.
Maybe Arizona State, but okay, still same.
But I mean, that's
Also, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened in that game?
Yeah, they lost that game.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing about asking how tested and like, what is this Texas Tech team? Don't talk to me about your non-conference. Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, and Oregon State. Congrats, 3-0. Actually, did put up video game numbers in those, so congrats. I look at this schedule and like the main question to me when I compare them to Oregon's schedule is what is more impressive? Is it more impressive that Oregon won close at Iowa and won at against versus USC and won at Washington? So they're not ranked teams except for Iowa was in and out. USC was a ranked team, but not a top 10 team. So are those wins more impressive? Or is Texas Tech beating BYU in a non-competitive game twice more impressive? It's not the fact that they beat BYU, it's that they did it twice to me. I do think I don't subscribe to the whole it's hard to beat a good team twice. It's just hard to beat a good team. So I don't give any credit to that part of it. But the fact that you did it basically the same way both times, neither game was competitive, I think that's your two talking points, right? Because the only other game I look at on Texas Tech's schedule where I'm really impressed is what they did at Utah. And Utah really came on at the end of the season. And that game was it's not as 34-10. It's not that. Utah just had some really bizarre turnovers in the fourth quarter, and Texas Tech scored on all of them. Good win because you won at Rice Eccles. That's hard to do.
Yeah. Yep.
But I don't put that win on the same level as beating USC or the way that they beat Iowa. And the other thing that really concerns me about a team like this is all of their games are non-competitive. Like they're all multiple score games except for one. And that one game is the one they lost. That really concerns me because I don't think this team is good enough to blow Oregon out. If they do, then I will buy on them. I'll say, hey, you shut me up. I was wrong. I don't think they can do it. And so now you are looking at a team who did that on the road at Iowa, who really looked pretty darn good against USC, right? Really good offense, improved, not elite defense. And then you got some of these games where it's just, okay, 43-20, but it's a dead Kansas State team. 48-9, but it's a team that hired Scott Frost. 35-11 is it's pretty respectable at Houston. That Houston team was better than a lot of people thought. But again, not an Iowa, not a USC. That's what really concerns me in this game. I love the under as well because, as you mentioned, the team with the motivation to score a lot of points in this game is Oregon, and the team better suited to do it is Oregon. Oregon has seen that, and this is an elite Texas Tech defense. Don't take anything away from that, but so was Texas A&M with the caveat of are they tested? And I think that this team has the same caveat. They should not have played a team of this magnitude in a spot this big. So I think the under is a great play. I also have Oregon -1, but I think because I still want to give some respect to Texas Tech. If you made me pick one, the under or Oregon, I think I would take the under. I think it's plausible that maybe Oregon has a couple. We've seen games where Oregon kind of plays around early in the game in the first quarter, and it's 6-3, 10-3. We've seen that before, and then Oregon comes in and turns it on in the second quarter. So maybe we get something like that. But I like the under a little bit more than the spread. But I do think that Oregon is going to move on here.
I want to, and I know they're different teams, but if there's one useful data point for me, it's Oregon's win at Kinnick, because it's not just that they won, it's how they won. They gave up a pretty rough touchdown, and you think, yeah, this is over. there's no way I was going to let them get in field goal position, and they did.
And
Teams
I
don't
don't
do
think
that. Just like
it
teams don't win
wasn't
at
like a
Autzen, teams don't do that to Iowa.
it wasn't like a or it wasn't an Iowa collapse either. Like they didn't just play
No.
prevent defense. Like the throws that Dante
Yeah.
Moore were making, that one throw to the sideline was like mouth wide open throw. And
Yes.
to do that against the Iowa defense in Kinnick when that entire place is just pouring down on you. And again, if you've never been there, and a lot of people outside of the Big Ten have not, if you have never been there, you do not understand how loud it gets. You'd think, oh, it's Iowa, right? It's like Iowa in the middle of nowhere. That place, when they are playing a ranked team at night, when they have a chance to storm the field, that place is as loud as Ohio State. I've been to Ohio State. That place is as loud as Michigan. I have been to Michigan. So do not discount that Iowa win. And that is exactly how Oregon needs to win this game if it's close. They need to do that. And again, like I said, Texas Tech had one chance to do that this year, and they lost.
Yeah. Robert, anything more on this one?
No, I think I'm excited for this one, though. Actually, I'm excited for all four of them, but yeah, nothing else to say on this one.
I'd wish you luck and good luck in this one, but we all know that's a bunch of crap. I want you guys to lose. All right. Even though I might be on the Oregon money line, just to maybe be aligned with you for a short time here. Okay, then Alabama at Indiana. Indiana giving all of only a touchdown here. I've just kissed ass on Indiana just repeatedly here. The only place where basically there's any kind of advantage towards Alabama, they're a little more explosive in the passing game. The thing is, they need to be because they can't run the ball for crap, and the thing is, they're gonna have no choice because I can't see them running against this Indiana defense, despite the defensive lineman that's out. Just to get this out of the way, posted total is 48.5. Athena has it going to 54. BuckMetrics at 57. So this is a podcast overplay. Robert, actually, this would be a dual model. I apologize, I did that before. Dual model. All the models like the over here. So that out of the way, I also like Indiana here. Look, all credit, like we just talked about, to Kalen for not panicking and beating Oklahoma at a difficult place to play. The bad news is each of the considerable shortcomings of the coach that you were able to exploit at Owen Field, guess what? They're not to be found across the field in this one. You've got one of, if not the best coach in all of FBS here. I'm impressed with what Alabama did, but I think Indiana is just a totally different caliber here. I'm tempted to just play Indiana side. It's not going against my models, but there's not enough margin for it to be an official podcast play. I guess, Robert, first of all, just to get the thing out of the way, since this is actually a dual model play, you fired up about the over here or not necessarily?
Yeah, no, actually, the over. I think one concern I do have, though, because my model, actually, when I ran this, I was shocked that I only had a 3-point margin here. I was like, what?
Yeah, I was too.
And I was like, there's no way. I'm receiving the game. I'm like, okay, we're gonna be like a 10 here. And I look at it after. It's just like, oh, it's a 3. I'm like, what? How can it be 3? I think this might be a little bit of an overreaction to Alabama scoring 34 against Oklahoma. And I think that's the problem. And there's no real way in my model to say, oh, by the way, Oklahoma just like generationally collapsed. So there might be a little bit of extra on that. So my model still has Indiana favorites. That's fine. But look, Alabama is still a good team. They clearly had some issues down the stretch. Clearly against Auburn, against Georgia. They seem to have fixed it against Oklahoma, but how real is that? How much is that just Oklahoma just completely collapsing? I don't know. I have some pre-bet Indiana minus 6.5 from before that game because I bet both sides of it because with FanDuel you could bet the look-ahead spreads, and then if whichever one wins, it locks in the bet. Whichever one loses, it just void, so you get it back anyway. So I just bet both sides. I just bet Indiana minus spreads in both cases just so I'd have something in. And sure enough, that actually has paid out. I've already gotten a half-point closing line value on this. So I will say that it's not. I don't know. I have 6.5. I think I will grab some over. But other than that, if Alabama were to come out swinging here a bit, maybe score a touchdown or something, maybe Indiana has to come back. Wouldn't hate that. Maybe I wouldn't hate grabbing some live here. So I'm not rushing to the window to get more Indiana minus 7. I think the way to bet this is the over here. I think Indiana has a really good offense. I think Ohio State was able to shut them down. I do not think Alabama's going to be able to shut them down that way. I question how, like, Indiana has a better defense than Georgia, and Georgia was able to completely shut Alabama down, but Oklahoma was not. I don't know how well Indiana will be at shutting down. Indiana's going to be at shutting down Alabama, but we'll have to see. But I think, yeah, I think a nice overplay here. I don't hate it.
Yeah. Isaiah?
So, Indiana, Alabama, right? I'm gonna come out like right away on this one and just say it. I really like Indiana on this one. Got this right when it came out at minus 6.5, so got it under the key number before it got played to 7. I look at the parallels between this game and the Ohio State game, right? And in the Ohio State game, we talked a lot about what does Ohio State need to do to lose that game. We talked about what their play calling looked like. We talked about how Miami's lines are a lot like Indiana's lines in terms of talent and in terms of havoc and what they can do to your quarterback game. Right? We had some weaknesses on that team that Miami specifically could take advantage of and make it an unfavorable matchup. I don't see the same thing with this Alabama versus Indiana game. I think again I was wrong on Alabama against Oklahoma. So credit to them, they won a pretty tough game, down 17-0. You have to be mentally tough to come back and to keep your spirits up, and then really just turn on the gas in the second half and take what the other team gives you. The problem is that this Indiana team doesn't give you much. This Indiana team is not going to give this game away. You have to come and take it. And I don't know really what the way you do that is against them because nobody has been able to do it. Ohio State played within 3 of them, but the second half was all Indiana, really. Like it felt very uncomfortable for Ohio State. It felt like Indiana was controlling that game, even though it was close. And outside of the run game, I think the run game is not, it's not elite. It's not the best run game in the world. But you've got Mendoza. You've got an NFL wide receiver room here. You have a defense that is just outstanding. Their lines are very similar, again, to Miami. So Alabama's going to have to deal with that. This Indiana team is significantly better than Oklahoma on both sides of the ball. And the other thing, too, is Alabama has done this now in the last couple games, including a win against Oklahoma, as they've started really slow. They have not looked sharp. They have made mistakes. Like you give a dropped punt, you give a special teams mistake, you give a pick 6 to Indiana, and the game is over right there. Like they pounce on everything. I also, just don't think Alabama has. Again, I hate to keep harping on this. I don't think they have the same, not just quality of wins, but the experience that comes with those wins. They don't have the experience of almost losing at Iowa and needing to win that 5-point game in the end. They don't have that kind of the line is favoring Iowa. Everyone's favoring Iowa. Our backs up against the wall. It's fourth down. If we make a mistake, the game's over. Indiana is just so comfortable and so locked in, even when everything looks like it's over, that you're not going to get the gifts that Oklahoma got, Davey. I like Indiana here. Again, Alabama, great win against Oklahoma, good season, but Cignetti's not going to make the mistakes that Brett Vanderbilt is, and he does. It will be the first time, the only time this team under Cignetti has completely been wiped out was at Ohio State and Columbus last year with a very different team. Even that Notre Dame game, yes, they were outmatched talent-wise. They're no longer outmatched talent-wise, but they did not just go home and die. Notre Dame didn't win that game by 50 points. I can't bet against Cignetti here. I can't.
Yeah, I want to, and believe me, I agree 100%. Here, if there's one thing that concerns me a little bit, and it's not a dumb angle, but it's at best tertiary. Alabama's now 2-1 against teams that made the playoffs, as they beat Georgia and they beat Oklahoma, and I think only Indiana can boast a better record than that, which is interesting. I bring that up because maybe if they had a different matchup, I might make a sneaky case for Alabama against someone else, but yeah, it's not happening here. Just Indiana's just too. I've made the case for months now. They're just the class.
I think it would be different. I think it would be different if Alabama came into this game hot, right? Blow out Alabama, maybe win the SEC championship game, or at least look competent in it. Totally different read on this game. I don't think that they can muster up what's going to happen. This is the same team that lost to Mike Norvell. Again, week one, I get that, but you did lose to Mike Norvell, and Kurt Cignetti not only has not lost to anybody other than Ohio State in conference play, and he's only lost to Notre Dame outside of conference play, he has not come close to taking that embarrassing of a loss. There's never a time where it was like, wait, like, why is UCLA close with Indiana? That's never happened.
Yeah, I never realized that. The only two teams that have beaten Cignetti at Indiana are basically the two that played for the national title last year. That's nuts. God, that's crazy. All right, so I think we're all pretty much aligned on that one. Last game. This is interesting. Bless you. Ole Miss at Georgia giving a touchdown as of this morning. Boy, this is as different as it gets in terms of just team profiles. Ole Miss definitely strength is on offense. Georgia's strength is on defense. Ole Miss has they're better on offense in all aspects. Georgia better on defense, clearly against the run game. I think that's the big difference here. When they played before, Ole Miss actually took a lead, and some would say probably maybe should have won the game at Georgia. Now this is neutral-ish. I think this is the Sugar Bowl, right?
Yes.
Okay, so home game for Georgia. But, and look, the models have this really close, much closer than the point spreads. Athena has Georgia by a point. BuckMetrics has Ole Miss by 2. Robert apparently has us going into overtime tied at 27 at the end of 4 quarters. I'm having a hard time backing Pete Golding yet. Now, he could just totally shove it in my face and say, you want some more? It's different going against what I'll say is probably the second best team in the American versus going against a guy that has 2 national championships, I think 4 conference championships in a very good conference. I think it's just completely different. And I'm just going to say the models are... I have a different opinion from the models rather than the models are wrong. Go ahead, Robert. It's weird to say, but...
That's fair. I will say, though, that, we saw this game earlier this season, and it was close. It was very close, and Ole Miss should have arguably won that game. And are you saying... Again, obviously our lines have so much Lane Kiffin in them that there's no way you could take Lane Kiffin out of that line. There's no way.
Yeah.
But at the same point in time, they functionally did exactly what they did against Tulane last time. Functionally the same score. So, I'm not completely willing to write this off. I think... I'm not sure where the public money's going to be on this, but, like, a part of me says, look, I've got a tie. You actually have Ole Miss outright. Fairly sure that... Would that not be a dual model play, then?
No, because Athena ruins it with the 1 point Georgia.
Only a 6 points, okay. But still, though...
Close, yeah.
It's close. Like, it's almost a dual model play to bet on Ole Miss here. I'm going to do it. I'm going to bet on Ole Miss here. Yeah, okay, maybe Pete Golding isn't good, and all of a sudden this just blows up in my face. But there's a chance that maybe they could do something here. Right? I don't know. I'm not willing to just completely write off Ole Miss yet. I think, one, I'm still not completely sold on Georgia. Yeah, okay, they beat Alabama 28-7 in the SEC championship game. Okay. And that win looks a little better now than what we saw Alabama do against Oklahoma. But for the first, 20 minutes of that game, it looked like that meant nothing. For the first 20 minutes of Alabama Oklahoma, that meant nothing. But then, okay, Alabama came back. Now, was that this is the thing where my model is giving Alabama a lot of credit for coming back against Oklahoma. Was that Alabama, or was that just Oklahoma throwing the game away? And the thing is, if it was just Oklahoma throwing the game away, then at that point, then I feel like you have to say, okay, then Georgia isn't that much better than it was later in the season. Like, Ole Miss and Georgia played half-ish weight point, something like that. My lean is Ole Miss here. If all the money's in on Georgia, I don't believe this Georgia team this year. And the thing is, basically, I think the spread in that game was something weird. I think it was 4.5 or 5.5 or something. I think they won by exactly 6 or something. They covered the spread in exactly a certain way. Now that we're getting a full score, I don't hate a bet here on Ole Miss.
Isaiah, are you concerned at all about Charlie Weiss Jr. now going to be a month into having 2 jobs at the same time, and eventually that diminishes what they get out of him?
it's a concern at the head coaching position. Kirby Smart's one of the best coaches there is, and now you've got an assistant. Not a blowout win over Tulane is awesome. Like you clearly showed you're motivated, but Georgia is not Tulane. This is a team historically that you really struggle with. You don't always get blown out, but you don't beat them. So now you do have to beat them on the biggest stage. I think the counter to that is that Georgia still has, or Ole Miss still has a lot of their assistants, right? A lot of people were put off by the way that Lane Kiffin said, you're either with me or you're not coming. And a lot of them said, we're not coming. So it's not entirely like this is just a bunch of backup coaches. There are still people here that have been with Lane Kiffin and know what they're doing. It's not the same. But like we saw them play Tulane, same venue as when they played Tulane in September. Basically, you could make an argument this Tulane team was better, right? Because even though it was week 4, it's still somewhat early for a transfer quarterback, but he did have 2 Power 5 wins. But these are basically the same exact teams, and they did the same thing. The games were not in doubt. The game was a blowout, and the game felt really just not fun if you're Tulane. So I don't miss here too. I don't know if I'm going to bet it.
Wow.
Under 7.5, if I could get that, that's really tempting. I think Georgia probably wins this game because I really, again, I respect Kirby. But I mean, we've been proven wrong on this Georgia team quite a bit. We have not believed in them during the season, and they do keep winning. Except I did bet them. I did bet them in the SEC championship game. I really liked them there. So I'm not a Georgia hater or anything here. I just think Ole Miss have the pieces, and I think they have the motivation to keep this one close and to put up some points here, right? You're gonna have to score, right? You cannot go and score 20 points, but I think they've shown that they can do that. This is a neutral field. It's in New Orleans. That's better for Ole Miss than it is for Georgia. That's not crazy, but like it is closer. I think if you make a play here, I kind of do like Ole Miss.
Oh, it's a Sugar Bowl, not the Peach Bowl. That's right.
No,
Okay,
Sugar
so
Bowl,
it's okay. So it's yeah. Okay, split crowd. Boy, you guys just have bigger stones than I do on that. Although Ole Miss's offense looked really solid against Tulane, but yeah, it was a G5 team. But the Magics are right there too. I guess. Question for both of you: if the weakest squad here is the Ole Miss defense, does that concern you at all, or are you just comfortable enough with the Ole Miss offense where you just don't really care?
yeah. I'm not concerned about it because I think Georgia has a good defense, but we're looking at their defense, right? 13 G Gab's really good. Like a really good run defense, really good on the ground, keeping it to the air. But Ole Miss kind of wants to do the passing thing. Obviously, they have the 205 Ryan. That's great. They're not going to get 205 Ryan in this game, but like 170 Apex Plus is nothing to sneeze at. And again, Georgia also has one of those quarterbacks where when he makes a mistake, he often makes another one. Like it's a snowball. And the other thing is they stopped doing it in the second half, but they were really bad with getting down early late in the first half of the season. They did it against Florida. They did it against a bunch of teams, and then they came back and they won and covered the spread. I still think that's a concern, even though they didn't do it as much in the second half. I think that's this again, and they did it against Ole Miss. They were down against Ole Miss. So I don't feel comfortable with giving like these are two teams. This isn't like a team where I looked at like Texas A&M and I was like, I don't know. They just have a lot of like things that I don't like beneath the surface. I just think these are two really good teams, and I can't give 7.5 points to a really good team against a really good team here.
Yeah, Robert, same question. This is just both you guys going on this. Just I don't know. Again, you're much braver than I am. Just you're not worried about the Ole Miss defense here.
No, their offense is the best unit on the field. Ole Miss's offense is the best unit on the field, and Ole Miss is a better quarterback. So, assuming, of course, that Chambliss plays, but if he does, they have a better quarterback.
And they're well balanced too. Jeez, I'm just not ready for a world where Pete Golding's in the Final Four. I'll put it that way. But good luck to you guys. I'm sure we'll be hearing about that while it's going on. All right, update of the football playoff future prices from Action Network. What really stands out to me is this is fascinating. I don't think Oregon moved at all after beating
50 basis points. They were like eight.
Were they 800?
I saw 8 before the game. So but again, yeah, barely. Like we talked about 750. I think they ticked up to 800, but yeah, they went from 800 to 850.
So yeah, I think that's still the best value here. Although it's no treat having to face Indiana in the semis, having them on your side of the bracket. I look, yeah, they had a important injury here in Indiana. I can't see that difference between Ohio State gets Miami. I guess that's but yeah, I have a hard time reconciling that difference between but India has to play Oregon too.
Miami is a 10-point underdog. Alabama is a 7-point underdog. So why is this line that big? Because that's not 3 points. That's not the value of 3 points.
It's also interesting that Miami. Now I got Miami 25-1. I think I had seen it in some books at 22-1. Apparently, it's just not moved. Even after winning in an upset, they're just like, no, you're done. That's what I don't get. Like, I mean, let's say that you priced, and I want to say it was roughly around this line. Let's say at Texas A&M and Miami were the same futures bet, which I think they actually were within a little bit of each other. And if you win a coin flip, shouldn't your odds have? Like, why is it that apparently it didn't matter?
Yeah, I don't get that. Because Ohio State was actually a little bit higher before. Mm-hmm. Higher odds, right? Because they were like 2 something.
Yeah, I think they were 210 maybe or 220.
Yeah,
maybe so they're saying Miami's worse now, maybe.
Well, or Miami's just a better matchup for Ohio State than Texas A&M, which I don't think
no, it's a worse. Actually, I don't know. It's a worse matchup because Ohio State got better odds.
So we all.
No, you're right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's a better matchup for Ohio State. Did I say that? I don't know.
It's Miami is? I'd
say
Miami
is a...
No, you said that you think the line... The question is it's not whether they are or aren't. You said the line implies that Miami is worse, which is not true.
No, but actually, because the thing is, a lot of these, basically a lot of these point spreads are calculated relatively, just quick and dirty, right? This isn't, insane, matchup for matchup calculations. They're not running 1,000 simulations like our models, right? So if you're just basing it off of point spreads and you haven't adjusted for the fact that Texas A&M has not been good the last couple of weeks, if you just hand wave away the South Carolina game and then you say, okay, then maybe you hand wave away the Texas game and then you're like, oh, okay, Texas A&M is still pretty good. If you do kind of whatever their spread would be, you'd be like, technically Texas A&M is better than Miami. So therefore, if Texas A&M is better than Miami, then by Miami beating Texas A&M, then Ohio State now has a better matchup. But now, I don't believe that for a second. I actually think Texas A&M would get crushed worse by Ohio State than Miami would. But just on defense alone. But again, that's not... But again, that barely changes. I would have expected, okay, maybe it's not going from 25-1 to 14-1 or something, but 18-1, we're still... Somehow Miami's line has basically stayed on the same. I think I had seen some 28-1s later in the week, but still though, that still seems a bit disrespectful. Basically Miami, which has a coach, same coach, is basically slightly better odds than basically the same odds than a team that has lost their coach, and random pieces are still randomly just coaching on spec basically for them. They have only slightly better odds than them, but yet worse odds than Alabama for some reason. I don't know. That one seems a bit disrespectful. Again, it's Ohio State to me is just. Could they win the national championship 100%? If Ohio State won and went back to back, I would not be surprised. Would not be surprised at all. But if you told me that Ryan Day, that Brian Harsin was calling plays and they played scared against Miami and they lose 13-10 or something, yeah, I can 100% believe that too. Not even a question. I believe it. And I think we all see that path where Ohio State plays it's a scared, we don't want to do anything too crazy, and then they get shut down on offense, and then the defense eventually just cracks under Miami running the ball because they were able to run the ball against Texas A&M. I can see that. I can see that scenario where that happens. But do I see a scenario where Indiana gets where that happens with Indiana, Alabama? No. Indiana's offense is strong enough that they will score points against Alabama. I'm 100% confident of that. I don't know if Ohio State will be able to score that many points against Miami.
That's a good point. Another thing, first of all, you said Brian Harsin. I'm pretty sure you meant Brian Hartline.
Brian Hartline, sorry, yes.
Yes.
Brian Hartline, who he used to
Now,
coach for.
he was a Cal OC. I think that I think he's gonna. I don't know, because they kept Rolovich. I don't know if they made Rolovich OC or just quarterback coach. What's his name? Lupoy did. Don't you just think? I'm curious, both you guys. Can't you just get a better price than plus 190 if you parlay moneyline Ohio State in the next 3 games?
Maybe.
Yeah,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
if you're
I'd have
doing
to
that,
look
you're
at
almost sorry, but it's almost a bet that Indiana's going to lose before the title game. If you're taking Ohio
Well,
State plus
I mean,
190,
I think the issue is that obviously you're not going to get much on the money line against Miami. Then it's going to be probably a pick 'em against Indiana. So you're getting like what, plus 100?
well, you
And
skipped a game.
then,
They would play Georgia or Ole Miss.
oh, yeah. Oops. Okay, yeah, that's where. Okay. So you probably are a narrow favorite, a couple points, 3 points, I don't know, maybe over Georgia. If it's Ole Miss, I think there's definitely. If you think that Ole Miss is going to beat Georgia
Yeah,
and you want to take a
yeah,
flyer, then yeah, you would definitely get better than 190. I don't
yeah.
think if you play the expected favorites, I don't think you wouldn't get better. Like the books are dumb, but they're not that dumb,
Yeah, it's okay.
except for FanDuel
DraftKings.
sometimes.
Yeah, betting Ohio State plus 190 is like implicitly you're betting on
Yeah,
just
but
weird
the
stuff
thing I don't
happening.
get, the thing I don't get about this is this feels not like last year. This feels not like last year where you look at Ohio State and you didn't have the data point of them blowing out Tennessee until the first round. Now we're looking at first round future. After I saw them beat Tennessee the way they did, I bet them to win the title. Because when I bet a favorite in a field, I need that team for me to find value in it. It's not that I don't think it can happen, or it's not that I don't think it will happen. I'm looking for betting value, and I need Ohio State to just be so far ahead of the potential matchups, not just the expected ones. If you play Ole Miss, can you tell me there is just no shot that Ole Miss wins that game? And I don't see it. So I don't see the value. I don't see the value on Ohio State this time. And honestly, if you're going to play one of the top two, it should be Indiana for me because they are the ones who have looked dominant the entire season, who have checked all the boxes, who have fewer red flags, and who don't give me creepy qualities sometimes with the dumb stuff the coaches do. That's what I'm looking in a favorite. I still like Oregon here. I still like. I got it at. I don't remember if we're 750, so it might not have moved, but it was right around there. I still think that's the right balance here between I
Hmm.
really see the path for Oregon. I really like both the matchups and the hypothetical matchups. I think if they get past Indiana, they are now my favorite. Like they got to get past Indiana.
Yep.
That's the tough part. But
Yep.
that's the awesome thing. Like for Ohio State, you had to get past Texas. Once you got past Texas, you were national champions. You knew it. Like it was over. It won't be that easy, I don't think, this time. If you're playing Georgia, right, like you can't just walk into the game and be like, yeah, we're beating Georgia. That's it, it's over. But I really like the path, the alternate path that Oregon has here for the value. I don't think it's a crazy flyer.
Yeah, agree. I'm curious, and you hit on this. Am I, especially because I said I can't really back this team, am I crazy for thinking that Ole Miss versus Ohio State would be more of a game than Georgia Ohio State? At least more fun. Like,
Yeah.
I think it would be more fun. I don't know if it would end up the way. I don't know if it would end up better, but I think it would be a lot more fun.
because
Because like we know that Georgia is just going to try to make life miserable for LSU, and then you're going to the Texas A&M Miami style ball, which a lot of people don't like. That's not what the Ohio State Ole Miss would be. You have to shoot out kind of national championship, which would be fun.
to, to Robert's point about like when he said the best unit on the field is the Ole Miss offense, they're exceptional at something that Georgia really isn't, and I think that gives you more of a puncher's chance against an Ohio State team. What offenses has Ohio State played that's as good as Ole Miss? I don't. I'm asking this not knowing what the answer is.
They haven't.
Right? Yeah, they held
Oh yeah,
Indiana
in
13.
in the championship game, yeah, which looked really good against. But then you want to obviously caveat that a little bit, not throwing it out, but it's not the same as if Indiana. It's not the same as what they did to Indiana last year. Let's go with that.
Yeah, yeah. Robert, you agree with that too? That
I think so, yeah. I think I'd much rather watch Ole Miss, Ohio State than Georgia, Ohio State. I just Georgia kept getting like they were really rough in a lot of those games this year, just like really rough. And I okay, yeah, they crushed Alabama in the SEC championship game. Okay, that doesn't excuse what happened against Auburn. That doesn't excuse what happened against Ole Miss. Literally, that later then. Okay, you crushed Texas. Texas isn't that good. This is the thing. I can't get out of my mind that like Georgia is just not that great. And now do I think Ole Miss is that great? No, I think Ole Miss's fatal flaw is its defense. But I don't completely trust this Georgia team, and I think if Ole Miss is actually okay and they seem to be fine, they seem to be still chugging along. Now maybe this all collapses in a couple of weeks, but if they're back to midseason form, they gave Georgia a hell of a run for their money. Probably their biggest scare all season, with the exception of the Alabama game. And if they could just do that again, I think they could win this game. And I don't necessarily want to bet the 23-1 because I don't think Ole Miss is a complete enough team to win a national championship. I don't think they're like if they have to go up against Ohio State. I don't think they are equipped to do that. I don't think they can take on an Ohio State or an Indiana or an Oregon. But like a Georgia, yeah, I think they could take down a Georgia. So, yeah.
All right. Anything else from either of you on this, or we agree that still the best value? Really, about the only real value here is on Oregon. It feels.
Yeah, I think just Oregon. That's the only one I'd bet.
That's the only that I say. Yep, that's an overlay. Okay, cool, gentlemen. Thank you so much. And if you are still listening or watching, we appreciate it. We wish you a very joyous Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate. And Robert, I don't know about you, but in about 10 days from now, in America, we will be celebrating New Year's Eve. I don't know if you've already had that a few weeks ago, like Halloween, or
yeah,
Thanksgiving.
Canadian New Year's Eve is December 5th, yeah.
Yes. I bet you didn't know this either. This is a little trivia for you as we go out. Did you know that American Boxing Day is in end of January? Were you aware of that?
Is it actually?
No, I totally made that up. Okay.
No, I was going to say.
Pretty clever of me, though. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Isaiah, thank you for jumping in. We appreciate it. The three of us will be in touch. And again, everybody, thank you for listening, watching. Happy holiday. Have a great new year. And good luck in the bowls and especially the playoff games. Until next round, bye-bye.
See ya.